The neon sign of Ole Red blazed like a beacon in the heart of downtown Nashville, casting a warm, electric tone over the street that was teeming with activity. Inside, the atmosphere was filled with the twang of guitars, the clink of whiskey glasses, and the laughter of a throng that was eagerly anticipating a night of performances of country music. At one point, the stage, which had been meticulously polished to a high sheen, was vacant, and the anticipation was building up like a summer storm. At the renowned honky-tonk owned and operated by Blake Shelton, it was not like any other night. It was the night that Zuma Stefani, Gwen Stefani's teenage son, stepped into the spotlight, channeling a younger version of Blake Shelton, with a performance that would leave the room buzzing with excitement once he finished. The Zuma rock and Nesta Rosedale, who was only 16 years old at the time, has always had a passion for music. Gwen Stefani, his mother, was a pop-punk diva and a legend of the band, no doubt, whose voice would go on to define a whole generation. Bush was fronted by his father, Gavin Rossdale, who brought a gritty, post-grunge intensity to the band. But did Zuma? Since he was old enough to swipe an iPod, he had been sneaking listens to Blake Shelton's early albums, such as The Dreamer and Blake Shelton's Barn and Grill. There was something about Blake's voice, that Oklahoma drawl, those stories of grief and small-town hopes, that captivated Zuma in a way that pop or rock music could never do. Later on, at Ole Red, he was prepared to demonstrate his point. When it was first conceived, the idea was a half-joking dare. Gwen and Blake, who had been married for a number of years at that point, were relaxing at their ranch in Oklahoma, exchanging anecdotes about their first performances. A near-perfect performance of Blake's smash hit from 2001, Austin, was performed by Zuma while he was splayed out on the couch, strumming a guitar, and belting out the song. An expression of surprise could be seen on Gwen's face as her distinctive red lips parted. With a broad grin on his face, Blake leaned back and drank a drink. In a tone that was equal parts amusement and surprise, he had said, "Kid, you sound more like me than I did when I was your age." During that moment, Gwen, who is known for being a showman, clapped her hands and announced, "You are going to be performing at Ole Red during the following month. Let's make it happen, shall we?" This moment, as Zuma stood backstage, he felt the weight of that daring against him. While he was adjusting the Stetson that Blake had lent him, his boots left a scuff mark on the worn wooden floor. The Stetson was a worn-out, lucky hat that stemmed from Blake's early days. On the other hand, Zuma was dressed in a plaid shirt and pants, which was a far cry from the skater shirts that he typically wore in Los Angeles. Zuma's frame was still filling out. His voice was not heard, but his blonde hair, which was a tribute to his mother, was visible through the cap. That was Shelton in its purest form, or, at the very least, the unfiltered, ravenous version of Shelton from 20 years ago. Through the speakers, the MC's voice could be heard clearly. "Honorable ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are in for a very unique treat. Get your hands together, because Zuma Rosedale is about to make his debut in the Ole Red." As they yelled, the crowd was both interested and a little bit dubious. Who is Gwen's child? To sing country music? Is it at Blake's Inn? They were required to view this. After stepping into the spotlight, Zuma examined the room while holding his guitar in a low position. The establishment was full with people, including locals wearing cowboy hats, tourists with flashing foam screens, and Gwen and Blake, who were tucked away at a booth in the corner. Gwen's hands were tightly gripped at her sides, and her eyes shone with pride. A delicate nod was given by Blake, the kind that conveyed the message, "You got this, kid." Even though Zuma's heart was racing, he squeezed the microphone tightly and allowed muscle memory to take over. In his voice, he murmured, "All right, y'all," and his tone contained a trace of Blake's effortless charm. Those who have ever loved someone who did not love them back may find this one particularly poignant. Zuma began playing Ole Red, Blake's harsh story of a jail dog and a cunning escape, as the band began playing with a slow and steady tempo. His voice, which was still youthful but surprisingly rich and deep, rolled over the music as if it had been born there with that quality. Curious at first, the throng moved closer to the speaker. As soon as he hit the chorus, there were a few whoops that broke out. He struck the perfect balance between the humorous menace. He walked with the same relaxed swagger and sleek grins that Blake did in old CMT film, but with a touch of Gwen's stage magnetism, that magnetic draw that made you impossible to look away from him. His fingers seemed to locate the chords with the same ease as if they had been doing it for years as he strung his guitar with self-assurance. Impressed, the band, which consisted of veteran musicians from Nashville, exchanged glances. The child in question was not a celebrity offspring who was simply coasting on a name. It was in his possession. Zuma took things down roughly halfway through the set with Nobody But Me, a Shelton track from 2004 that is not as well known as other Shelton songs. Having been written by a youngster, the lyrics, which are sincere and a touch sensitive, have a different impact. The phrase, "I don't want to have to leave you," and "I don't want to continue without you." The audience felt it, as shown by a collective sway and the flashing of a few lighters in the air. His voice cracked just enough to make it sound real. In the booth, Gwen wiped her eyes and whispered to Blake, "He's got your heart in there." Blake was listening intently. When Blake was too choked up to respond, he simply nodded. There were certain flaws in the set. During the performance of Some Beach, Zuma made a mistake with a chord, but he laughed it off and continued on with his performance, ultimately winning over the audience with his honesty. In other words, he was Zuma, appropriating Blake Shelton's sound and making it his own. He was not attempting to be Blake Shelton 2.0. During his rendition of God's Country, his voice soared over the powerful pace, sounding raw and defiant. This performance brought the house down. By the time he finished his performance with Honey Bee, the audience was standing up and singing along with him as if they had known him for a very long time. The crowd surrounded Zuma backstage after the final note was played. The band gave him a slap on the back, the bartenders offered him a beverage on the house, and the fans demanded selfies from him. As Gwen and Blake made their way through the crowd, Gwen wrapped Blake in an embrace that came dangerously close to causing his hat to fall off. "You were incredible, baby," she exclaimed, her voice filling with the intensity of her feelings. Zuma's hair was ruffled over by Blake, who was towering over them. "Man, I am so proud of you. It was a stage that you took and you owned it." After some time had passed, Zuma said that he had been absolutely afraid as the family was sitting in the now quiet Ole Red and eating at a plate of nachos. He mentioned this while fumbling with a guitar pick. "I kept thinking that I would mess up, and everyone would know that I'm just a kid from Los Angeles," he remarked. He laughed out loud. "Kid, you are really not anything at all. I can't believe you've become a country singer." In addition to being a victory for Zuma, the evening was a time that brought together two different worlds. Together, Gwen, the queen of ska-punk, and Blake, the king of country music, had brought up a child who had discovered his own path, fusing their respective inspirations into something fresh. Fans were gushing about Gwen's kid stealing the show and Blake's mini-me tearing up Ole Red as they posted clips of Zuma's performance on social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter. A few people referred to it as a gimmick, but the majority of people saw what the audience at Ole Red saw, raw ability that was unpolished but irrefutable. Zuma held his guitar bag with a newfound sense of self-assurance as they exited the pub, the metropolis of Nashville beyond them shimmering with illumination. He wasn't sure if country music was the way he would spend the rest of his life, but for one night, he channeled a younger version of Blake Shelton, and the stage brought him a sense of comfort.